What's going on, guys? In this video, we're doing a Tailwind rebuild of the Sketch landing page. This is an absolutely gorgeous landing page. It's fantastic for basically any software as a service. You could use this as like a business landing page. You could do so many things with the layout that they have here. And we're going to be building this entirely in Tailwind CSS. And in my case, I'm going to be using Vue, but so long as you guys have Tailwind CSS installed, you guys can follow along with whatever framework you're using. So a couple things we're not going to be doing in this rebuild. We're not going to be making this really sexy animation that we see on the right-hand side, as well as the little lines that pop up back here, because that's kind of out of the scope of Tailwind CSS. We are going to be doing that. We're not going to be using this JavaScript effect. So as you guys see, if I scroll down here, I get that like slight little change in orientation. Again, that's just JavaScript, not Tailwind. And I think the last thing we're not going to do is this this SVG kind of overlay on top of this div. That to me just seems like a massive pain in the butt, yeah. And as you kind of scroll, get closer, different things pop up. So we're not going to be doing that. But aside from that, basically everything else is going to be done, and the end result is going to look remarkably similar. So without further ado, let's head on over to our development environment. I've already spun this up here in VS Code. I have already done a couple of configuration settings to this development environment. Namely, I went into our tailwind config.js and I've just added this little snippet. What I'm doing here is I'm extending the base theme, adding some extra colors, and then defining another color called caret. And here are a bunch of hex values for various numbers. We have 50, F9, F4, E6, 100, so on and so forth, all the way down. What this does is basically just going to give me a color palette that corresponds more closely to the primary kind of colors that they're using here. Because Tailwind's colors don't really match 100%, and that's fine. So on top of that, I also added a font. Now, Sketch uses a very particular font. It's custom and it costs a fair amount of money, so I'm not going to buy that. But we are going to get probably 98% of the way there just using a free font from Google called Inter. And it is super easy to get. If you guys are using Nux, I just use a Google Fonts kind of wrapper. But essentially, all you have to do if you want to install it on your project and you're not using a framework is go to that page, click select this style, and you'll get this little CSS snippet that you can just then add to your website. Or if you are familiar with the import syntax, you can do that too. So in my case, when I go over to my Nux file here, I think all I did was I just added a custom class called font display with a font family of Inter and sans serif as the backup. That is all you have to do basically to be on the same page as me. So without further ado, why don't we actually start breaking down this website and getting it built. Now, first thing I see right off the bat here is, let's start with the navigation bar. First thing I see is this looks to me like it's a full width div all the way across with a smaller div, probably like 70 or 80% of the way, the entire width of this page, nested in the middle. And then inside of this, there are what looks to me like 3 containers. There's this container on the left, this other container in the middle, and then another one on the right. And each of these containers look to me like they're flex aligned with a little bit of spacing between each column. So if I were to do something very similar to that, I would start by first creating my master kind of container. This one's going to go across the full width. I'm going to just give that a quick background color just so we can see. And why don't I just say py2, just so we can add a little bit of spacing here. Okay, great. So this right here is essentially the div. You'll see that instead of py2, why don't we just go like h32 or something? That'll be more realistic. Yeah, there we go. You'll see that this spans across the entire width of the page. Inside of that, we're going to make another div. We're going to make that a little bit smaller. So let's do another one. This time, let's go BG Blue 200. And why don't we go max width? Let me see. Is this 7XL? Oh, let me add a little bit of a height to this too, h32. Yeah, that looks to me like it's about 7XL. And we'll center it with MX Auto. That's going to push it right in the middle of the page. And let's just see how this width looks. I think that's a little too big. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn that 7 into a 6. And ooh, that is basically remarkably accurate. Perfect. Okay, now inside of this blue div, we're going to do a couple of other things. We're going to create 3 kind of subdivs. To me, it looks like they're flex aligned, justify between. That just means that basically each of these containers are being like stretched out as far away as possible from every other one. So let's do that here. Inside of this blue container, let's do BG yellow 200. Let's Let's start with that, and we're just going to do H32 on all of these for now because we don't actually have any content. And I'm just going to copy and paste this 3 times, changing the yellow to indigo, and then, do they have a teal color? No, it doesn't look like they have a teal color. Cyan? No, let's just do green. And then on the parent container, because right now this is just going to stack them all on top of each other, on the parent container, why don't we go flex, and then I'll also add justify between. So that should basically take every single sub element and just push it all the way to the left and the right. Now we don't actually see that here, and the reason for that is I don't know. So let me add a little bit of text to each of these and see if we can make that pop up. We're going to type menu here, and on the right we're going to type buttons. Let's see if that changes things. Yeah, there we go. We just need a little bit of content in there to stretch the width out, because otherwise the width just automatically goes to min. So that to me actually looks pretty good from a layout perspective. We have our logo and stuff like that on the left. We have a little menu in the middle, and then we have the buttons and stuff like that, kind of the call to actions on the right. And there's actually a really sexy little hover effect that goes on there, so I'm going to enjoy making that. So why don't we start with the leftmost component here, and that's just the title sketch with what looks to me like either a PNG or SVG of their logo. And I'm just going to cheat. I'm just going to like copy and paste whatever that is. So this is very clearly an SVG. So you guys can see there's a bunch of paths. So why don't we just go to the parent SVG element here and give that a quick copy and paste. I'm going to put that in here, that element, and just quickly kind of command. Yeah, perfect. That looks good to me. Okay, great. Right now we're using fixed width and height properties, but just because we're already using Tailwind, let me get rid of all their classes. Why don't I just go H8 width 8. Use Tailwind classes instead. And we'll see the height and width basically didn't change at all, and that's because the height and width is the same when you're doing H8, W8. I believe it's like 32 pixels. Now that is awesome. I'm noticing here that there needs to be a little bit of padding between the top of the page and the logo, so I'm just going to add a little bit of Y padding onto this parent element. Let's go PY3. Let's see if that works. Yeah, decently close. Decently close. Why don't I actually add this onto the child element, just in case we apply any colors or anything like that later, and then turn this to PY5. That should be better. Awesome. Yeah, that looks good to me. Now, on top of this SVG, we also need to add a piece of text here that's a sketch. So why don't I go H2 and just type in sketch real quick. I also added a space X2 here just to space out what we are going to be flex aligning. So if I go back here, you see that we now get that little flex align, and it looks to me like it's just about space X2, so that was quite good. Unfortunately, though, it needs to be quite a bit bigger. So why don't we go text 3XL, and I believe this is going to be a font bold, although I may be mistaken. Yeah, I'd say that's reasonably about the same size. Now is probably the time for me to add the font display class, by the way. So why don't I type font display in and see if we can get something closer. Yeah, there you go. Much better. We're going to turn that font bold into a font semi-bold. And we're going to also add tracking tighter to bring that text in together just a little bit. And you know what? Let's actually do 2XL. That'll be better. Yeah, there you go. Looks a lot more realistic. You'll notice that the spacing is a little bit off. I think it's a little bit higher. So what I'm going to do is two things. I'm going to add a text gray 800 just to make that a little darker. And then I'm going to go to the parent element here, and I'm going to go item center. And that should like give us a couple pixels, basically. And you'll see that this is being pushed all the way down to the middle of this because we've explicitly set height properties. So now we can just take all those height properties off. Oops. Don't take all of them off. There you go. Awesome. So that to me looks pretty freaking good, in all honesty. In terms of colors and stuff like that, I mean, I'd say that's probably 80% of the way there. They're just a little bit darker while also being a little bit lighter than the text gray 900 class. So we're just going to leave it there and kind of move on. Next thing we got to do is we have to do these menu elements. We have 4 designers, 4 teams, resources, and pricing. And it looks to me like they're spaced out maybe like, I don't know, space X6 or something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this menu, and we are going to space this out flex. Then we're going to space X, let's do 7 for now. And then I'm going to create a, actually, instead of that, why don't we do this? We'll create a UL instead of this div. And we're going to do, let's just do 4 LIs there, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4 things. Perfect. And inside, I'm just going to add like example, example, example. And let's see what this ends up looking like. Okay, so we're stacking them all on top. That's because we haven't added a flex. And let's also add a SpaceX6 class to this. And yeah, we're actually getting decently close. Why don't we go SpaceX8 instead, though? That looks a little better to me. Perfect. I'd say that's very reasonably close to the same width. Now, the text does look a little bit smaller, so let's try text SM. And why don't we also center this to the div that we have? That's going to bump them down a little. And let's just start entering that text for designers. Second one is for teams. Next one is resources. And the last one is pricing. Let's break those out. Good. Also, the font looks like it's semi-bold, so we're going to go font semi-bold. And let's do text gray. I think this is probably 700. Yeah, we'll give that a try. Yeah, that looks pretty decent. Looks pretty decent. I think they're at a size that's probably halfway bigger than SM, right between SM and MD for us. So we're just going to stick with this. But aside from that, it looks pretty good to me. The letters might also just be spaced out a tad more. But in all honesty, I'm not going to nitpick because I don't want this to be a 7-hour video. So let's roll with that. And this is also going to be pushed over a little bit to the left when we space out this div. So that should fix that. I'm going to start removing these backgrounds that I've added just because I don't want this to get in our way of comparing the two. And so when you remove them, you can see this is actually getting decently close. I think that the centers of these are a little off, probably because I did not add flex to the, I didn't add item center to the parent flex container here. So if I item center this, these should be pushed down just a little bit. You see that buttons just went down a bit. And this is a lot more clean in my opinion. There's a little SVG here that's spaced a little bit to the right of resources. So in order to get that, I'm going to go to Heroicons. I'm just going to go, I think, chevron down, right? Yeah, chevron down right here. And I'm going to basically just flex align this list element and then, I don't know, space it out by like a couple pixels. So if I go to this list element where it says resources, I'm just going to go flex SpaceX. Let's just do 1. And then I'm going to make an H3 with resources. And then I'm going to add that SVG. And I'm going to add just a quick little class. Let's just do width 4, height 4, and just see how that looks. Yeah, it looks decent. I'll also add an item center to this parent div. And that's just going to bump it out just a tad. There you go. Yeah, that looks good enough for me. All right, let's get moving on these buttons on the right. So that is the last thing we have to do here to finish off this nav bar. Let's go flex. Let's space these out by, let's say 3. And let's just write sign in. Just 2. Let's do 2, actually. Let's just do sign in. And then I'm going to make another one that says try for free. Awesome. And I'm kind of a stickler here, so I'm going to capitalize that. Good. That looks fine to me. Looks like the text is actually a little bit smaller, so why don't I go on this parent element, just type text SM. Should get us a little closer. Nice. And let's get started with these styling. So first off, this has text caret 500, I believe. Yeah, that looks reasonable to me. I'm going to go font semi-bold on this, and that should honestly be it. Yeah, it's basically good enough. I mean, obviously the font's not the same. You'll notice that's slightly different, and that's okay. We've already talked about that. Looks like there's a brief little hover effect that makes it a little lighter. So all we have to do for that is just go hover text caret 400. So we're basically saying when we hover over this element, just make it a little bit brighter. And you can also make that a little bit slower by adding transition, just to enable all transitions, as well as a duration property that basically gives you the number of milliseconds for whatever transition you want. So in my case, now it's 200 milliseconds from when I hover over it to when it gets a bit lighter. See, it's just a little bit smoother than whatever it was before, which is very close to what they're doing. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make this button. So it looks like the text is white. It looks like the background is the same color as the sign in. And it looks like there's a little hover effect over it too, which I'm going to get into in a second. So why don't I add a class? Let's go background caret 500. Let's do px3 py2. That should be reasonable. Rounded SM, shadow SM, and then what? Transform. Yeah, let's do that. And then hover negative translate y. Let's do 1. Yeah, let's see if that works. Awesome. Okay, cool. So we're probably 90% of the way there, in all honesty. I didn't add an item center to this, which is why we get that weird spacing. So added that, problem solved. I also didn't add text white to this. Let's go text white and then font semi-bold too. That should be more reasonable. There you go. You'll also notice that when I hover over this, I get that real slow kind of rise, whereas this is a very fast rise. I don't like that fast rise. So again, we can save that by just going transition and then putting in a reasonably long duration. So I think they're probably 300 or even 500. I added 300 here, and you'll see that that kind of mirrors it. Unfortunately, this is a lot smaller. So let me see if we can go even smaller than translate y1. I think we can. Do they have a px? Yeah, they have a px. All right, let's see this. Perfect, much better. Okay, in addition to this hover effect, it looks like they also add a little bit more of a shadow. And with Tailwind's new utilities, we can do that really easy. Let's just do shadow large on hover. So that's theirs. This is ours. Actually, the colors look a little bit off now that I'm looking at it. I think all the 500s need to be changed to 600s. Let's see. Yes, actually, they totally do. Perfect. So why don't I just change these backgrounds to 600, and then I can hover this to 500. Yeah, there you go. That's a lot more realistic. I was wondering why that was off. Okay, great. And the last thing we want to do is on hover, we want to make the background of this a little bit lighter so that it looks like this now, and this looks like that. Perfect. I'd say that's reasonable. I think if I were to go rounded medium on this, it would be a little too rounded. So I'm just going to stick with, yeah, it's way too rounded. I'm just going to stick with small, and that's going to be a decent approximation. Okay, guys, so zooming out, this is what ours looks like, and this is what theirs looks like. You'll notice that there are a couple of differences, of course. It looks like our roundedness is quite a bit smaller, and actually these buttons need to be just a bit bigger. Actually, I think the font on this in general needs to be a little bit bigger. Why don't I actually add PY3 to this, just see if that looks better. Yeah, I'm going to go PX4 actually. Our buttons are just going to be a little bit beefier, but that's okay. Yeah, so aside from that, I believe that's basically it. I can make these cursor pointers. I mean, I could just turn all these LIs into, I could just nest all these within A's, but I'm not going to do that for now. I'm just going to go class cursor pointer. That way, anytime I hover over any of these, you're going to get that cool kind of, you know, cursor pointer effect. Same thing that you would get if you were to go over here. Well, I guess one more thing I could do is I could change the hover states here. These go pretty light when I hover on them. So if I were to go back here, let's just do cursor pointer, hover. Let's just do text gray 400. That's probably it. Yeah, text gray 400 looks about right. And we'll go transition duration 200 for those. So now we have basically the same or very similar hover effect on each of these elements. Very cool stuff. Okay, so now that we're done with this nav bar, why don't we get started on this hero header section down here? Like I said, I'm not going to be creating these beautiful animations. I think they're amazing. I just don't have the time or wherewithal to. And this isn't something that really Tailwind is good for. But we can get started on this instead. Yeah, let's do that. And then once I get down to here, I'll just start mobile optimizing it so that you'll see how responsive it is on each different breakpoint. I usually don't like to make things responsive one at a time. I like to just add a few components together, make sure that they all mesh well, and then I can worry about that responsiveness, you know, after 3 or 4. That's what my workflow looks like, but yours may differ. Regardless, let's get started. Looks first of all like there's a decent margin here between these divs, so this is probably pushed down like MT24 or something like that. Then you have what looks to me like this could be a flex layout. Let's see how this looks when we push it together. Yeah, this could be a flex layout. I mean, you could do this in so many different ways. You could do this with grid, flex. I like grid, so I'm just going to use grid for this. But essentially, we have 2 divs, one on the left, one on the right. This left one looks like it's flex call, or I guess just block too. You have like a very big heading, then underneath it, you have a little bit of a margin, some smaller text, then you have a decent size chunk margin with a flex container that has 2 buttons. They are each SpaceX, like 3 or 4 maybe. And then you have a bunch of really tiny text down here. Then on the right hand side, you just have this animation, or really just this image. In our case, we're just going to apply a screenshot. So let's do that. going to scroll all the way down here. You know what? Why don't I actually make this semantic? Yeah, there you go. So now we know that that's a nav bar rather than just another div. That's going to be good because it's going to turn quite long, so I just want to know where to start and stop. Why don't we just do nav bar? There you go. Now we're going to go down here and do hero header. All right, so first thing we have to do is, like I said, we have to make this div. Looks like the width is going to be the same as before, so we're just going to go max width 6XL. I'm also just going to center align this with MX Auto. And why don't I just go BG Yellow 200 and H64 for now. You guys will notice, you'll see that when I do most of this, the template root in this requires exactly one root element. That's just a little hand-me-down from from Vue or Nux, so I'm just going to add that. You'll notice that the way that I usually design things, I add a bunch of these like placeholder divs just to see where things are. So in this case, I added this yellow placeholder div just so I could see. Looks like I need to bump this down now with like an MT, maybe 24. Let's give that a go. Wow, that was remarkable. I am scarily good at that. Okay, great. So let's use grid for this. I'm going to, if I had to guess, I'd probably say this is like 7 grid columns with this taking up 4 and this taking up 3. So let's try that. We're going to div class width full, h full, bg pink 200 just to see the first one. And for the second one, let's just turn this to blue. I've just created these two. Let's also go call span 4. And this one's going to be call span 3. This is just going to tell us how many columns that each div should span. So this is not apparently aligned right. Oh yeah, because I didn't add grid. Make sure to add grid, folks. Okay, that actually looks really close. I think that honestly might be it. I believe we could probably get this a little closer if we wanted to, but that to me looks fine in terms of spacing and layout. You'll also notice that when these guys get a little bit smaller, what looks to me like, what is that, the large breakpoint, it just turns to one grid column with one thing on the top, one thing on the bottom. So why don't we just add that in right now so I don't forget. Grid call 7 when we are on large displays, and then anything else, let's do grid calls 1. And let's also only add this call span 4 and 3 on large displays, and then otherwise let's do call span full. That way they'll just both span the full width of each column. So if I save that now, we should have very similar functionality. We'll scroll down to the large breakpoint, which is here. So I think it's a couple pixels smaller, but yeah, then we have that functionality where one of them goes to the top, the other one goes to the bottom. Awesome, exactly what we were looking for. So now we have to work on the actual text. Let's start with a big H1 because this to me looks like the main heading. And then underneath we have what looks to me like, let's just do an H3 for this. I wish my Emmet was working, but it's not. Underneath we'll have another div. So let's just do div class bg, I don't know, indigo 200. And inside of that, I'm just going to put 2 buttons really quickly. Let's just do an ahref of this. Class is equal to bg caret 600 px4 py3 text sm. Actually, no, let's stick with text md. Shadow sm and rounded small. And then let's also just add this text. So try for free. And I'll also flex align this, SpaceX3, add another div here, and then I'll just make that div say C pricing. And instead of BG caret, why don't we go BG white, add a border real quick. I think that's actually just border 1. Let's just do border gray 300. There you go. That should be reasonably similar. Kind of, not really, maybe rounded MD. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. And we'll work on that. We'll work on that more in a second. But okay, I guess I'll just add like 10 things. Let's do 5 things of lorem here, and then another like 15 things of lorem. That way we can just see what this all looks like. Okay, and let's just make this really big because this is the H1. Why don't we go text 5XL? See what that looks like. Good size, bad size. Yeah, I'd say it's pretty decent. Let's go text 6XL, font bold. And why don't we just add font display to this? That way we can get a much more realistic looking font. That looks good to me. You'll notice that the text is very bunched together on this sketch.com landing page, whereas ours is a little bit more spaced out. All we need to do to fix that is just add a tracking tight, or even tracking tighter. So I'm going to add tracking tight to this H1. See what that looks like. Yeah, that honestly looks pretty good. I think good enough for me now to just copy and paste this text over. And I'm just pasting into my URL bar. It's like a hand-me-down from when I used to do a bunch of WordPress development, because I really do not like when formatting is copied over. All right, this looks pretty good to me. Honestly, I think their text is a little bit bigger, so why don't we go 7XL? Let's just see if that works. Yeah, there you go. That looks a lot more accurate. And let's get working on this paragraph, or rather this H3 down here. Looks to me like this H3 is probably like text 2XL, text gray 700, I would say. And the tracking to me also looks tight. Yeah, that looks fine. And let's go MT3, bump that down just a bit more. Okay. Also looks like the leading, so the space in line height, looks a little bit bigger than ours. So I'm just going to add a class to fix that. Let's just do leading relaxed. That should space this out just a bit more. Yeah, there you go. That looks fine to me. All right, let's copy and paste this text over. Do this. And give that a quick save. How are we looking? We're looking pretty good. All right, next up, we're going to work on this div underneath with these buttons. So this looks pretty big. I'm going to go MT8, see if that's bumped down properly. Yeah, that looks decent. That looks decent. You'll notice like the text isn't wrapping exactly the same. And I think that's actually because of the tracking on this. So let's actually remove tracking tight and see if that works better. Yeah, a little bit. You'll see that there looks to me like there's a little bit of padding on the right-hand side here. And that is what's making theirs roll over a little faster. So what we can do to do that is go to the div that is the parent element of all this stuff, right? It's the left grid column. And why don't we go large screens, padding right 8. See how that looks. There you go. I'm pretty sure padding 8 is basically exactly what they had. And that's what ours looks like. That's what theirs looks like. Next up, I'm now going to space out these buttons a bit. They're a little bit too close, and I'm also going to work on like just getting that sexy hover effect down, as well as just the general look. So now I can remove these BG yellows, BG pinks, and BG indigos. I'm not going to drive myself insane. And I'm going to space these out just a tad more. So I got to go over here, write SpaceX4. And then I'm going to change the color of this to white. And then we'll go font semi-bold. And I'm also going to add rounded SM. Oh, it looks like we might have already done that. Yeah, I'll tell you what, why don't we just stick with SM everywhere. So I'm going to go over here to this other button and go SM. And now I'm going to add a little bit of extra space here. So this is going to be PX5 instead of a PX4. There you go. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other button as well. So I'm going to go PX5. And that looks pretty good to me. The shadow's a little bit too big on this. So why don't we go shadow SM, and then on hover we'll go shadow MD. Yeah, that looks much better. And then we just have to do the same thing that we did to our old button up here, down here. So why don't I go back and just copy that over. Hover, translate Y, PX, hover, shadow LG, hover, BG, caret 500. And if I use this more than one more time, I'm just going to create a component class for this stuff. That should work. Yeah, that looks good to me. I'm just going to make sure to add the transition property and duration 200 on that. Cool. So it's a little bit different. Oh yeah, I got to do the same thing down here. Transition, duration 200, transform, hover, negative translate, YPX. And then what it looks like the text changes a little bit too. Text goes just a little bit lighter. So why don't we go text gray, I don't know, 700. See if that works. Yeah, it looks pretty good to me. I'll also add the font semi-bold. Let's just go tracking tight on each of these. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I could also change the border and make that a little bit lighter. Perfect. And I guess the last thing I can do is when I hover, the border gets a little bit darker, so I'll go hover gray 300. Cool, cool, cool. All right, I think that's enough of me being a stickler with these goddamn buttons. But aside from that, if we zoom out, it's actually looking pretty good. It's looking quite similar. We only really see these massive differences when we're zoomed in 50 times, like I clearly like to be. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add this fully featured 30-day free trial. So I'm just going to copy this, go underneath this button div, and just do like a p tag. Looks to me like this is probably going to be a little lighter, so let's go text gray 700, text SS. Yeah, even lighter than that. Let's do text gray 500. And it looks like this wraps over, probably right around here, so I think that's probably like text a max width 2XL. Let's do max width 2XL. Let's also add 3 units of margin top. Yeah, even closer, man. Let's do MT max width MD. Hell, I guess we're doing max width XS. Perfect. That actually looks really close. Last thing I'm going to do is just go leading relaxed, space this out a little bit. And yeah, we're like literally 95% of the way there. Okay, that looks great to me. Now I'm going to add an image on the right-hand side here. Like I said before, they have an animation. I'm just going to use a screenshot. I think I had this one here. So sketch underscore screenshot.png. So we have our grid here. This here is the left side, and then this here is going to be the right side. So for this, all I'm going to do is create an image, put my source as assets, sketch, what are we doing here? Screenshot, I believe, .png. And then for class, I'm going to width full, height full, objects. Let's do object cover, and let's see how that looks. I think this is the right folder, right? Assets, yes, sketch screenshot. Okay, so probably not the right, oh, never mind. Okay, that worked out. All right, well, I think that worked fantastic. We're probably like 95% of the way there. Hell, I think we might actually just be done with that. I can't really see any major differences. The background color here changes a little bit. You'll notice when the lines appear on the page. Otherwise, it kind of goes a little bit brighter. We're not going to worry too much about that because we can't fix that. But I might just be able to add a BG gray 50. That might be a little closer. Yeah, no, the background on this is white, so I'm not going to go in there and edit that out. We're not going to worry too much about that. And awesome. Okay, so that's what that looks like. Now that we're done that, I can actually worry about, mobile optimizing it a little bit. If we go on Sketch's website and we start bringing the width of the page down, you see that couple things happen here. So the nav bar changes quite considerably. In addition to that, we also have that kind of wrap behavior that we saw with the grid columns. If you look at ours right now, when we go bigger, we got that wrap, but that wrap, the element is actually absolutely massive. And there's also a little bit of like cutoff of the image as we go smaller and smaller and smaller. We also need to add padding on basically everything, so I'm going to do that as well. And we need to make this image a little bit smaller when we go all the way down. So instead of like width full, for example, we should probably just go width auto. So let me start with that. Actually, let me just take both of these out. Save that. And why don't we actually just do max width, like, let's do LG for now. And then LG, we'll just go max width full. Perfect. Yeah, that looks good to me. We'll also go MX Auto. So that's going to push this into the middle. And then we're also going to do that with this div to push this into the middle a little bit. Although it's already spaced out fully, so that's not actually going to do much. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to add padding on everything. So I'm just going to add a little bit of padding to every single element. On LG displays, why don't we just do like PX2, and otherwise we'll do PX6. Let's see how that looks. Let's get reasonably close to similar. Looks like they have a little bit more, in all honesty. If I bring this down to 840, this is ours, that's theirs. So it looks like they probably have like, I don't know, 10 or something like that. Let's give that a try. Maybe even more. Let's do 14. I believe Tailwind now has a 14 class. Yeah, they do. Awesome. Yeah, perfect. That looks good to me. We're also going to add a little bit of padding up to the up on the nav bar, and we're also going to work on this cool little transition thing that we have going on. So I'm just going to remember that. So LGPX2 and PX14. On the nav bar, it looks like they probably have, I don't know, 3 units of padding or something like that. So why don't we go LGPX2 and then let's go PX. Let's do PX4 for now. Yeah, maybe even more. Let's do PX7. See how that looks. Yeah, there you go. That's a lot better. All right, now let's work on actually changing the visibility of these divs. It looks like when we go from a breakpoint up until about large, we have all of the divs, and then when they go a little bit smaller, it looks like we get rid of a few. So we get rid of this try for free button. We also get rid of this entire div. And then it looks like we add another div. So we have a div that's previously hidden on large displays that then pops up on small displays. And that div looks like it's just a hamburger icon. So why don't I just go to Heroicons real quick, type hamburger, and copy that SVG, and get this sorted. So this is them, this is us. I need to do a couple things. First thing I have to do is I have to hide... hold on a second. I don't really like this either. I think the padding gets too small too quickly. Why don't I do this? Why don't I actually add this all the way up until XL? Instead of LG PX2, let's do XL PX2. Okay, that's good too. And I also don't like the fact that this is clipping our image, so why don't I really quickly scroll down here instead of object cover. Let's just do object contain. There you go. That's a lot better. Yes, it gets substantially smaller until we reach that breakpoint, and then problem is solved. In all honesty, though, it doesn't really look like theirs does, so let me see if there's another way that I can fix that. There's a bunch of object classes here. Scale down, maybe? No, that's not going to be it. Let's do object... fill. See if that works. Definitely not object fill because theirs doesn't stretch out. Why don't we try just removing this entirely? No, I guess we do need to have object contain of some kind. Flex shrink 0, maybe that. Okay. Well, honestly, that degree of getting a little bit smaller is fine for now. Yeah, that's fine for now. We'll work on that later at the end if we have extra time. But okay, great. Now we're looking up here at this nav bar. A couple things need to change. The first thing that needs to change is the sketch text needs to disappear. So why don't we go hidden, and then on large displays, it's block. So I go small. That's going to disappear. Good. Let's do the same thing to this UL. Let's go LG block. Otherwise, it'll be hidden. Oops, sorry, LG flex, otherwise it'll be hidden. Go back here, delete that, awesome. We see that we have it here, and then we reach that breakpoint, it disappears, good. And let's also do the same thing with that try for free button. So scroll down here, and I go hidden, otherwise let's do LG block. Scroll down here, boom, that's gone, and we go back up. Last thing we need to do is we just need to add another div with that SVG. That goes before all of the rest of the stuff. So let's just go div. And why don't I just paste in that SVG that I copied forever ago. And looks like this is probably going to be width 8, height 8. Let's do that. Yes. Yeah, I'd say that's reasonable. Let's actually just make the stroke width a little bit smaller. And now let's add hidden. No, actually, we're going to add LG hidden. There you go. Now it's going to disappear on large screens. So this is ours now. Looks pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. Boom. Have that breakpoint. Nice. This is theirs. I guess the last thing that happens is there's a little bit of a shadow that appears immediately underneath this. So why don't we add that as well? And it looks like it goes across the entire div, so I'm going to use the top parent div in order to do that. Let's do shadow MD, and then on large, let's do shadow none. That should work. Oh wow, that is remarkably similar. Awesome. Okay, and aside from the fact that obviously their hamburger icon only has 2 little lines and ours has 3, I'd say it looks probably like 85, 90% of the way there. Let's see if anything else happens when you go real small. Looks like their text gets a little bit smaller. That's certainly not something that we've done, so we can do that as well. If I go back to the best product, start with sketch. That's going to be where? Right over here. Let's do MD text 5XL. And let's do small text 5XL. On large screens, we'll do text 7XL. Actually, let's just do text 5XL normally. Yeah, there you go. That looks a lot closer. And honestly, though, it looks like we have even more padding. So we can dumb that padding down a little bit, get it closer to theirs. Because right now, we have 14 units of padding. So realistically, it's probably like MD 14, otherwise PX like 5. Yeah, there you go. And I think I added PX5 up here too, didn't I? I added PX7, so why don't I do that? Yeah, there you go. It looks a lot better. Okay, perfect. I'd say that's probably 95% of the way there. I'm happy with that. Let us now start working on this little element down here. The way that this element looks to me is that there is a flex container on the outside with 2 children. One that's 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 2/5 of the way, and the other that's 3/5 of the way. And the one that's 3/5 of the way is center aligned, so it's probably flex, justify center, item center, and then there's a little bit of extra line height on each of these lines. Also, the text here is bold. There's a little bit of a border surrounding this. Doesn't actually look like their border goes all the way. Might be one of those pesky little border bugs. Let's see this. Yeah, there's like a little bit of a white space there, and that's fine. Okay, let's do something really similar. So we scroll all the way back down to our current project. We are here. There's probably, I don't know, 12 units of margin. So why don't I create a div? Let's add BG Pink 200. For now, we'll go with 96, probably, and H44. And we'll also MX auto that. So that'll be right at the center now. We see it comes up here. Reason it comes up here is, do I have H properties on anything else? No, I do not think so. It's quite odd. I may not be on the bottom element. Hold on. Okay, so we're a little bit spaced out here. Let's try and figure out why. The hero header starts here, and it ends all the way down here. That's good. I create another div, and I don't give it a height property. I just say that it's block, it's px4, py4, bg gray 900, rounded full. We should see a little circle. This is my little sanity check. Where is that circle popping up? Looks like that circle is popping up here in the middle of the page. It should not be popping up in the middle of the page. So clearly there's probably still a height property that's applied to something on here. Okay, in this case, yeah, it's this. This says that it's height 64. So we take that off. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that fixed the problem. So let me delete that again. Let me paste in our old div. That's where it is. Let's go MT probably 12. Yeah, it looks basically remarkably similar. And let's widen that bad boy out a little bit. I believe this would probably be max width 3XL. No, 2XL. We can also turn this BG to white, add a border, go rounded SM. Let's make that border gray 200. Hell, that's actually going to be even smaller, just XL. Maybe even LG. No, that's quite reasonably similar, actually. All right, there's also a shadow, so let's add a shadow medium on this. The shadow actually looks substantially softer. Let's see if I can do large. That might work. No, that's too strong. XL. Still quite strong. Okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll show you guys a little trick that you can use to soften your shadows with Tailwind. Add relative to the parent div, then make another div that is inset, has the property that you're looking for, and then set the opacity to like maybe half or something like that. So we're basically just creating a child element with the same shadow, just making it a lot softer. Yeah, I'd say that shadow looks decent. Our shadows are a little cooler than theirs. They have a little bit of a warmer gray, but that's fine. Now we're going to get to work on actually adding the various halves in. So let's make this... I think I need to absolutely position this. That way I'm not going to be screwing with it when I do a flex. So we're going to make the parent container flex, and then underneath we're going to add two smaller containers. The first is going to be our image container. That's going to go width 2/5. And then we're going to create another one that's width 3/5. And Emmet, for whatever reason, does not like Tailwind auto-completion, so I'm going to go back here, save, and we should be good to go. Oh, I guess I haven't added anything in here, so that makes sense. Let's go BG yellow 200 and BG red 200. Should be seeing something. Oh, wow, yeah, that is basically exactly what we're looking for. Okay, great. Now that we've verified that that works, I'm going to add an image to this left container. The source is, I think I already have this, rotating mockup or sketch mockup. Yeah, sketch mockup.png. So we're going to go assets, sketch mockup.png. And I'm not going to add any alt text because I'm not trying to rank this page. That would be very illegal. We're going to add object cover. And it'll pop up every now and then. And you'll also see that there's a little bit of a space underneath. So why don't we go H full? Yeah, that'll stretch it out a little bit more. Cool. That looks good to me. Obviously, it's like slightly different, but that's cool. Now we are going to change the other half to BG white. And we're going to make this flex, go justify center and item center. And then we're going to add some text. Let's do H3s. For this, I'm just going to copy this text. So switching silicon, how Sketch performs on Apple's new hardware. See if I can literally just go in here, copy this. Yes, I can. Save that and get out of this. Okay, cool. So we have the text in now. Why don't I add just like a general P8 property on all this, and then on the actual H3 class, I'll go font semi-bold. And then text XL. Actually, a little bit more. 2XL. Let's also add a font display to this parent class, just to make everything that beautiful font. And why don't we go tracking tight, and then leading snug. We can go even tighter than snug. Yeah, let's go tight. You know what? Just go XL. Yeah, there you go. It's a lot better. This is actually even bolder. So we're going to go bold. That looks quite close. The font itself looks to be basically the same color, so we are good. Okay, awesome. I wish this could be just a little bit bigger. I think it would look better if it was bigger rather than smaller. So why don't we make this just a little bit bigger? Let's go 2XL. It's going to be a little bit bigger than theirs, but that's fine. You know what? I totally lied. We're going to stick with XL. This is what being a designer is, folks. We're also going to... This is why I'm not a designer, rather, because I don't like going back and forth. All right, so something interesting happened there when we added a rounded MD class. We see the parent element is rounding, but the child element is not, because I added a rounded MD on the outside. I didn't add a rounded MD on the inside. So to save this, or rather to solve this issue, I'm going to do a couple things. One, I'm going to go overflow hidden. The only issue with overflow hidden on that is it hides the shadow that we have, because 95% of that shadow is like overflow. So let me see if I can actually take this out. Do this. No, it looks like we're still hiding that shadow. So never mind, we're not actually going to hide that. The way that we're going to do to solve that issue isn't using overflow properties. We're going to solve it another way. So if we go back here, you'll see that cutoff is still visible, but our shadow is also visible, which is good. We're going to go to the image, and we're going to make this image rounded MD, but you're going to notice that's going to screw out this side. So we're only going to do rounded LMD. That should work. Yeah, there you go. Looks like there's a little bit of a gap, just because the divs are both different sizes. But, oh, actually, hold on. I don't need to put overflow hidden on that parent. I could just go overflow hidden down here. Doi. Nope, never mind. Rounded LMD. Let's do that. And then let's actually take this off. Okay, cool. So I think that actually works. I added rounded LMD on the parent element here. So you see there's still a little bit of a gap, and I don't believe they have that gap present. Yeah, they don't. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, virtually indistinguishable. So we're good to go with that. I'm going to now do the same thing over here on the right-hand side. So I'm going to go rounded R MD. And that'll round it such that it is basically indistinguishable, which is good. It's basically what we wanted to go for. Let me see if I can add even more of a shadow here, in all honesty. Shadow looks a little too extreme. Why don't we stick with, why don't we go do MD rather? Let's try LG. Yeah, you know what? I think LG is the most similar. Okay, great. That was about 20 minutes of me mumbling, but looks like we got something that looks pretty decent, in all honesty. So what I'm going to do next is do these three little buttons. A lot of people think you need to like include images for this type of stuff, but you can actually just make this entirely in HTML and CSS. So immediately underneath this div, I'm going to make another div. I'm going to make the width really small. Let's do like 16. Hell, maybe let's just start with 32. Let's do BG gray. What is this, like 100 maybe? We'll go height 8 for now. And I'm just going to MX auto this so this gets pushed all the way to the middle. Okay, great. So that's us. A little bit too big, of course. Theirs is substantially smaller. So why don't I go width 16? We'll add 5 units of margin top here. Bump that down. Yeah, that looks actually basically perfect. And then instead of height 8, let's go like height 5. That'll probably be more similar with what they have. Yeah, let's do height 6 and then width 14. There you go. That looks just about right. Our margin's a little too big, so we'll go 4. I'm just going to rounded full this, so that's going to turn this into a pill shape, just like them. Perfect. And now... Oh, where did I put my VS Code? Now I'm going to flex this, item center, and then justify between. And I'm going to create these very small little circles. To me, it looks like these circles are like, I don't know, half the height, probably. So why don't I just go H3, width 3. BG gray 300, rounded full. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, a little too big. So we're actually going to go width 2, H2. Perfect. That looks fan-frickin-tastic to me. And this isn't actually justify between, I lied. It's justify around. Yeah, because there's a little bit of space on the outside here. If it was justify between, it would push them all to the ends. I suppose you could use justify between if you added a little bit of extra padding here to this little pill element, but we're going to use justify around, see how that goes. Now that I have 1, all I need to do is copy this 3 times. So, 1, 2, 3. And we have this, and it does look like there is actually a little bit of padding, so why don't I go PX1? Let's push this in a bit. Nice. And then this BG gray 300, I'm just going to change to like 400, and then I'm going to make the first one 300, so it's a little bit lighter. Actually, never mind. They do it the other way around. They go darker on the one that's selected. Substantially darker. There you go. I could like take a screenshot of that. That looks probably like 95% of the way there. Super close. And I'm very happy with that. All right, awesome. Next up, we have this social proof div, trusted by some of the world's best product teams. We have a bunch of these super sexy logos, and it looks like when we hover over them, we got that alt text. It's really nice. I really like this section. In order to get this done, all I have to do is add probably about 32 units, maybe 28 units of margin top. Then have text that is uppercase. Looks like that's probably text MD uppercase with like a font text gray 500 or so. And then flex align these. And then after I do that, these two up here, after like I'm done both of these, I can work on mobile optimizing these. So trusted by some of the world's best product teams. Let's do it. I'm gonna go MT24 for now. I'm gonna go H3, and then I'm just going to copy and paste this text in. You'll notice it's already uppercase, but good practice is just to go uppercase anyway. Let's go text gray 600, and then we'll go text medium. Let's see how ours looks. Oh, ours is actually going to be shimmied all the way over to the left-hand side, so why don't we go MX Auto? And why don't we also make this max with 6XL? I'll bring that in a bit. Oh, never mind, that didn't actually work. Text center then. Yeah. Because we didn't MX Auto the parent container. There you go. This looks a little bolder too, so it's probably like semi-bold or something. Let's go font bold for now, and then we'll do semi-bold after. Yeah, that's semi-bold. That is most definitely semi-bold. And we're going to go tracking tight on this bad boy. Nice. So that's like 90% of the way there. It's a little bit different. Their font is just a bit more stretched out than ours, but there's little we can do about that, unfortunately. So let's just roll with that. And then they have this little font, this little logo section. So what I'm going to do here, just because I'm finding it kind of hard to see, I'm just going to add another div underneath with an empty of 32. And I'm just going to say like placeholder div, basically. And we're always going to work on top of this. That way we always have just a little bit extra space down here so that, you know, I can scroll up to about here and I can see, you know, the entire package. I can see the next thing that I'm working on. But anyway, it looks like this this other div down here is flex aligned, I would have to guess. And let's see how it acts when we make it smaller. So they stretch out. This is classic justify between. And then there's a certain breakpoint. Yeah, and then it flex wraps. Okay, that's really easy to do. Now, the question is, how are we going to get these images? Actually, these aren't even images. I'm trying to like click and drag. Are these SVGs? Yes, they are SVG. Ooh, every single one of these is an SVG. That is really cool. Okay, well, I'm just going to cheat and be kind of a douchebag here. I'm not going to remake all this from scratch. I'm just going to copy their home logos div, which is where they have all their logos. And then I'm just going to change all their classes because I don't want to, you know, I'm using their classes, or rather I'm not using their classes for a reason, right? So just going to make them all smaller. You can see that now they're arranged just like up and down. We can mimic the effect that we're going for just by going flex, SpaceX, probably 8, I would guess. Let's see. Yeah, there's a substantially bigger. So let's not even use SpaceX. Let's just go justify between for now. Yeah, that's actually super close. And then why don't we... Actually, this looks a little bit smaller. You know what? They're probably justify around. Yeah, there you go. Part of me thinks that Sketch used Tailwind for this because the spacing is so similar on so many of these elements. I'm going to bump this down, probably 8, maybe even more. Let's do 10. Okay. Let's do 12. No, let's do 14. Yeah, there you go. It's really similar. And then that actually looks good to me. Why don't we see what this does when we make it smaller? So we go smaller, 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 smaller. All right, so they end up getting way too close together. And the reason is because I don't believe we applied a wrap property to this. So if we go wrap, when they get too small, what we should see happen is they start folding over. And that's good. That's exactly what we want because that's exactly what these guys do. The only issue is ours, when they fold over, they do not have any spacing in between them. So we can create a breakpoint for them to fold over at, or not a breakpoint, but a width at which they fold over, just by adding a little bit of a SpaceX. And let's actually make that even bigger. Let's do space x12, and then let's only do that on really small displays. Yeah, that looks decent to me. Why don't we just lock the same breakpoint here? See what ours does relative to theirs. So theirs is already going. That's because they have padding. We do not have padding. So if we just add some padding to this, LGPX2, and then what was the other padding that we added? Everything else. Should really standardize this. Looks like they do PX5, right? MDPX14. So we'll do PX2, PX14, and then PX5. That should work. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I don't think they have that weird kind of like jump feature like we do. Theirs just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So I'm just going to take out this MDPX14 and just bump this up. Let me see if I need to, actually. There's also a little bit of a space vertically, now that I'm looking at it, in all honesty. So what we could do to solve this is just go to every SVG's class and then add a little bit of a PY, I believe. Ooh, nope, never mind, MY. Yes, that's more like it. So an MY4. And this way we can also remove some of that spacing. So we'll turn the MT14, let's do that down to 8. There you go, that's much better. And let's just add a little bit more padding to this. Let's do padding 10. Because to me that looks a lot closer to what they have. Yeah. Cool, guys. I would say that's probably 90% of the way there, which is all I'm scoring for on this one. Now, this video is getting pretty long. I'm going to try and breeze through some of the rest of this stuff. But first I have to eat lunch, so I'll be right back. All right, just had a fantastic lunch. Man, I learned how to make a donair for the first time the other day, and I am just crushing it. One of the best meals I've ever had. Let's pick off where we left off. This is them. This is us. Scrolling down, we've made it all the way to probably like probably about half the website now, in all honesty, because we know about the container layout and different color scheme that they use and stuff like that. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to mobile optimize these sections that I just did so that upon certain breakpoints, they don't like totally kill us and screw everything up. I figure that, yeah, after they reach their small breakpoints, you see this little card here. It ends up going from a div that is kind of like top to bottom. A side to side to top to bottom. There's also a little bit of padding on the outside that we do not have. So why don't we add that in? We'll start with the padding. In order to get that done, we need to create another element that is full width across the width of the page. And then we need to add a little bit of padding to that. And then we also just need to add those breakpoints into the two flex children. So let's go to our images. Where's that? Sketch mockup right over here. That is this. And let's do two things. First, I'm going to grab this entire div. I'm going to wrap this in another div that's width full. And then I'll just do PX5 because that seems to be our standard at this point. Let's make that a little bit smaller. And boom, you see it, this comes in a little bit just like theirs. This is part of what we wanted to do. And the next thing we want to do is we want to make this width to 5th only occur on, I'm guessing, small screens and up. I might be mistaken there, but let's go with small screens and up for now. Otherwise, we'll just go width full. So it's going to take up the full width below small screen sizes. From small screen sizes and up, it's only going to be 2/5. I believe this is what we want. So small breakpoint, coming. No, apparently it's not coming in. Interesting. Okay, well we can just do flex then only on small and above. And then just remove what we just did there with the 2/5. Yeah, let's try that. Whoa, okay, that is really big. Maybe a little too big. Well, it's certainly working on that breakpoint. But it's way too big. Why is that? Do I have a height full on anything here? Yeah, I do. Explains that when we take that off. Yeah, okay, good. So why don't I go height full, and I'll only do that on small screens and above. Good, and we'll see there's also something else in the background here. It's a little lighter. So what is that? Looks like something with a fixed width, something like that. Could be this shadow div. So why don't I take that out and see what happens? So it is that shadow div, okay. So for whatever reason, this is not stretching the full width. So why don't I go top 0, bottom 0? See if that works. Left 0, and then height full. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. This appears to be taking the size of its, or rather the height of what it is here, not here, if that makes sense. And I believe that there's also a fixed height property somewhere. There you go, fixed height 44. So if I take that out, that should eliminate the issue? Yes, it eliminates the issue. Okay, great. It's one of the downsides of using a fixed height properties, guys. One of the reasons I would encourage you guys to be careful with that. I think if we just remove height full from this entirely, it'll look a lot better. Yeah, there you go. Okay, now we're going to make it smaller, 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 and let's see if we get the intended behavior. Yeah, we do. Awesome. Okay, great. That looks good to me. How's everything else underneath? Good. I think from a spacing perspective, things get a little closer together when they, sorry, so this is a little bit further away on small screens. There's a little bit more like vertical space. And then it looks like this gets a little bit closer together. Unfortunately, I don't think we can mimic the exact breakpoint that they're using, because it looks like they're using like an extra small breakpoint. Yeah, so I don't think we have an extra small breakpoint on Tailwind. No, we don't. This is with 60%. And this is like right about, what, here? Yeah, right about here. So what, like 500? Whereas we break at like 600. So ours is going to look a little bit different. We'll also notice that it's a little rounded on the left-hand side, and that's because we didn't take out the rounded LMD. So why don't we only add that to small and above? There you go. Problem solved. So yeah, that's a slight difference right there. Let's fix the height of this, though. Why don't we add MT8, and then small screens, let's do MT0. So that'll pump this down a bit. If we go back here, let's actually do more. Let's do MT16. Can we do even more? 32? And then medium MT0. Looks like we're combining MTs, actually. We should never be doing that. So we'll go a little bit smaller, smaller. And let's see how theirs looks. They have about a relatively constant height. Yeah, that looks fine. And then, ooh, never mind. It jumps way up, so we should not be doing that. Why don't we go MT12? But why does it go to MT32 right after? So on big screens, it's MD12. That makes sense. Smaller, smaller, smaller. Underneath that, it turns to MT32. Okay, so why don't we do MT24 instead? That would look more reasonable. You know what? Let's just do this on LG instead. That would simplify my life quite a bit. There you go. Okay, good. So we're done with that aspect of mobile responsiveness, mobile optimization. Why don't we move on to building out these beautiful grid systems? I love the way that they built these. Looks to me, when I first look at this, that we have a 3-column grid. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, 1, 2, 3. There are 2 grids that are repeated. There's one up here and there's one down here. The top grid is literally this spanning 1/3, then this spanning the other 2/3. And then the bottom grid is just these 1, 2, 3 little explainer sections. So we can actually make that incredibly quickly, and I'll show you how. We're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom here. We're going to do this above our placeholder div. Our placeholder div, I don't know if you guys can see, is all the way down here in the corner. Looks like spacing-wise is probably about, I don't know, 24. So why don't we go MT24, we'll do a BG yellow 200. Grid calls 3. We'll do height 64 for now, just so we can actually see this. And then we'll go max width 6XL MX auto to push this into the middle. Great. That looks good to me, and from a height perspective, it's also very similar. So we are also going to make 2 subdivs here. One that is, call span 1. That's going to be the first one. Let's just do BG pink 200, and then the other one is just going to be call span 2, and we'll just do BG indigo 200. So we'll have 2, kind of 1/3 split here, which is basically the exact same width as theirs. And let's get working on the left. So first left, we have what looks to me like an H2. Work fast, create beautifully. I'm just going to copy and paste that in. Next up, we have your best work happens when tools and A, B, C, D are available. And then we have a button that's learn more. And if you guys pay close attention, you'll notice that this learn more button is the exact same as the button that we made up here. So I can actually go to my try for free button here. The one that's in kind of the middle of the page, so not this one. It'll be this one here, and I can just copy that in. So why don't we go down here, paste that, and there may be a difference actually in terms of width. This might span the entire width. We'll see. I think I might have to go inline block on this bad boy. Yeah, there you go. And let's get to styling. This to me, we scroll down here, this to me looks like it's probably like 2/3 the size of this. There's also a little design thing on top actually, I totally forgot about that. So why don't we go like H4. I hate using H4s, but I just can't think of anything else to use here. So we'll start with uppercase. You know what, we're actually just going to take the same text that we used for here, because that looks the exact same. So why don't we go trusted by some of the world's best product teams, and then font semi-bold, track and tight, text center, blah, blah, blah. We're just going to copy that. And then we're going to paste that here. The only difference is I don't think this needs to be in the center, so we're just going to take that out. Let's see. Design, yeah, looks good to me. Next up, we're going to add just a little bit of padding here, MT2. Then we're going to go text 4XL, font bold. And let's do text gray 800. Another thing we should do to all of these is add font display. That's something that I previously forgot. So if I go back up here and add font display, you'll notice that the fonts are actually going to change. So this is going to change and this is going to change. Yeah, that looks a lot better. I was wondering why that looked a little off. So we scroll back down, we'll see that text, where are we? Right over here. That text 4XL is actually decently close, right? It's probably like 80% of the way there. I think if I make it a little bit bigger, it might be a little too big. Yeah, it is a little too big. So why don't we stick with 4XL? And then ours is a little bit smaller, but that's okay. Why don't we just do an MT4 on this to bump down the next part of the text. And then let's just go text LG, text gray 700. Might even be 600 actually. And you know what? I think we can go XL. There you go. We'll go leading relaxed. And then let's actually go 600 here. And you'll notice that this wraps a little bit earlier than we do. And that's probably because we haven't added any padding to the right of this. So why don't I just go on LG and go PR8. Yeah, there you go. That looks really similar now. For this learn more, all we have to do is do like an MT8. That should bump it down quite a bit. I'd say that's reasonable, quite reasonable. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then instead of learn, or rather try for free, we'll just go learn more. And I think they had a capital on that, didn't they? No, they didn't. I lied. Awesome. Now we can start removing all these nasty colors as well as the fixed height. It's one thing that I have to remember to do more often. And when we take all that out, including the yellow, this is what we're left with. Work fast, create beautifully, work fast, create beautifully. So quite close, quite close. Next up, we have an image. We're going to apply that image here. So I'm going to go image source. Actually, no, this is a video. That's not an image at all. Why don't we do this? Why don't I just copy the source and I have to replace image with video here. Yeah, okay. That's good. I did not even realize that that was not an image. Okay, that's good. And then what else are we going to do? We are going to add, I think, autoplay loop, probably. And then I'm going to add a class to this image. Let's border. Let's do border grade 200. Let's do rounded MD, and then that to me looks like there's a shadow XL on that image. Easy. Yeah, you see, that is perfect. Additionally, by adding that, I think some of the transparency in the background layers were removed, so it just looks a lot more similar to what we were going for. For whatever reason, ours isn't playing. I don't really... God, it's been so long since I've used a video tag. So muted loop plays in line. So if I do that, plays in line, that should probably work. I think it probably takes a little bit of time because we're on localhost, but you know, we'll get back to that. Oh yeah, there we go. I just need to reload the page. And yeah, perfect. Now we have that video playing. Fantastic. It's honestly a very high quality video. Like the more and more I zoom in, I would expect to be losing a fair amount of quality, but no. I wonder if that has the implications for the load speed. Regardless, I'm just going to turn this spacing just like 1 pixel down, or one unit of margin top down, just because I think that's a little too much. And aside from that, yeah, looks pretty. Great. Let's do the other 3 down here. Bring your ideas to life, build designs that scale, and customize your workflow. The way that this is built is basically the exact same as what we had up here. So we could do it in 2 ways. 1, we could do this in the same container, or 2, we could just do this in another grid. I would feel more comfortable just doing this in another grid. That way we can customize the breakpoints and stuff like that a little bit better. And I don't know, I just prefer modularizing everything. So I'm going to go down here, create another div. We'll go class grid max with 6XL. We'll do grid calls 3, MX auto, MT, what's this? MT20 probably. Let's do MT20 and font display. And then I'm just going to create 3 subdivs. And we don't actually even need a class for this. I think we can just like wrap these with an H3, a P tag, and an image tag, looks like. Yeah, that looks good to me. I'm just going to copy the text from the first over. And I'm going to find this image, copy this, bring this here, and then let me just format this so it looks a little better. Okay, and then we have, yeah, we have this. Good. Now I'm going to add, what's that? Text gray 800 still? Okay, yeah, that is text gray 800, which is exactly what we wanted. Why don't we go text XL on these? I think that would be fair, yeah. Then we'll go font semi-bold, and then looks like they have very little spacing here, or margin top on this text, but I think it would actually look better if we add a little bit more. So I'm going to do that. And then just see if there are any other differences. Looks like just the color is the only thing. So let's go text gray 500 to this, which is actually really close, which is fantastic. And honestly, it looks like they have tracking tight set up. The image itself is a little bit smaller. I think we could probably do H20. So why don't we go H20 with 20? No, it's H16. Let's do that, add that, perfect. And there's a little bit of spacing over here. So let's do MT3, that should work. There's a downside. For some reason, this image is pushed a little bit over to the right, whereas their image is not. So I'm curious as to why. I'm gonna quickly hop into the, looks like it's because they position relative this. I don't really see why that would work. But yeah, let me add relative and see if that changes anything whatsoever. No, I didn't think so. There needs to be something for it to be relative to. So for whatever reason, they have that set up. Why don't I just do this on large screens, because I assume I'm going to want to change things. Why don't I go -ML1? Yeah, there you go. That aligns it perfectly to the side. Great, now that we have this, we're just going to copy and paste this 3 times. So, perfect. There's a little bit of a gap in between, actually, that we do not have. So why don't we go to our div, and we'll just go gap x. Why don't we just go gap in general 6. That'll add a little bit of a gap between these. Space these out a little more. Make them a little sexier. Yeah, that's pretty close. We can go even more. Let's do gap 8. And now I'm just going to copy and paste the rest of this text. So build designs that scale is the next one. Customize your workflow is the one after that. Choose from hundreds of plugins. Sure. Lay the foundations for your product's design system. Okay. Space these out. And now I'm just going to open these new tabs with these images. So this one is here. And then this one is here. Okay, that should work. Yes, okay, awesome. That is ours, that's theirs. It's looking real good to me. Last thing we gotta do is just add a link that says browse extensions that goes to the side. So that is on the 3rd grid element underneath the p tag. Let's do text caret 600, I believe, font semi-bold. And we'll just go browse extensions. And I think they're just using an arrow. If I had to guess, I would say they're just using an arrow. I might be mistaken. Let's see what they're using. Please be an arrow. No, they're actually using an icon image. They're legitimately using an image for that. Interesting. I would not recommend that. So we are going to just do this ourselves. We're going to go flex SpaceX to justify center. Let's do that. Justify center, sorry. Justify, hell, I'm not even going to include that. I meant item center. Then we're going to go down here, div that, and then I'm going to go heroicons. We're going to go arrow. This is a pretty long arrow, so let's use a shorter one here. Space that out, and then the class is going to be like width 3, height 3. If we go back here, we should have a tiny little arrow. We should just change that to text caret 600, I believe. Yes. What's their arrow look like? Man, that's a sexy arrow. Okay, we're going to make our arrow a little bit bigger to try and compete. All right, I'm happy with our arrow. Also, I lied. It's text caret 500. Go back down, and then we're going to space that out by 2. Awesome. And then last thing is we're going to add 4 units of top padding. Cool. That looks good to me. Yeah. Again, we're very similar. Very similar. If we just go back and forth, back and forth. Yeah, we're probably like 80, 90% of the way there. A couple differences. I mean, this shadow is a little bit softer than their shadow. Spacing-wise, looks pretty close. They have less spacing than we do, but I honestly think that ours looks better. I think they should have a little bit more spacing to disambiguate between the header text and the paragraph text. Looks like they might have a shadow on these. No, that's actually part of the image. So yeah, aside from that, you know, it looks pretty good to me. Last thing is, they might have a little shadow on this that we do not have. No, we have a little bit of shadow. That's fine. Okay, guys. Awesome. So now that we've done that, we're going to do basically what looks like the same thing, just reversed. So whereas this text is on the left-hand side and the image is on the right-hand side, looks to me like they just have the image on the left-hand side now and the text on the right-hand side. Also looks like the background color of this is actually darker up here than down here. So this is a good opportunity for me to show you guys how the background gradient works on Tailwind. I would assume this is probably equivalent to like BG Gray 50, and this is probably BG White. So all we're going to do now is, I mean, if you're using a framework like me, you could just create a component and then just copy and, you know, create a component in components up here. Oops, shit, that was a bad idea. Let me remove layouts again so my entire project doesn't crash. I keep forgetting to take this out. No, do not do that. Here? Yeah, there you go. Sorry about that. You could create like a components folder and just make this kind of grid system a component, and then, you know, add a couple of little arguments in that can like move these things around. We're not going to do that just because I'm doing this in HTML. I'm assuming a few people are probably going to follow along in just pure HTML CSS. So I'm just going to copy and paste actually both of these divs. right here, immediately underneath. And actually, there's one thing I'm going to do before then. I'm going to create a wrapper element with the background color property. So we're going to go BG gradient. Let's do to bottom. Let's go from gray 50 to white. Let's do that. Let's paste everything else inside, and then let's see what this looks like. Awesome. Yeah, that actually looks reasonably close. Difference, of course, being that if we go to our BG gradients, we should add some padding to this. So I'm going to add, I don't know, 16 units of padding. No, that's too much padding. Let's do 8 units of padding. Let me see if I still have that height property anywhere, because that usually ends up screwing me. No, I think that's good. Although we might. That's pushing pretty high. Oh, you know what? I know why. No, I don't think we have heights here. Yeah, I think the heights are generally good. Nope. Nope, 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 nope. No heights. Okay, that's good. That's getting PTSD, because last time I heighted. Okay, so interesting then. We have this kind of weird thing happening where if I scroll down a bit, sorry, scroll up a bit, and I add extra padding to this element, it actually pushes it around. So let me try and figure out why that is. So I am right over here right now. If I remove all this margin and all this padding, this should just come real close. Okay, good. So I'm going to empty 24. It's going to bump me down. Good. Now I'm going to PY 8. Cool. I'm going to PY 16 now. Let's do even more. Let's do 24. Yeah, I think that's more similar to what they have. Perfect. Again, they're using much warmer grays than we are, and that's just fact of life. Nothing we can do to change that. Aside from, of course, you know, get warmer grays, but I'm not invested enough to spend the time to do so. I would say at this point, all we have to do is switch the order of these elements. So I'm going to take out the div that's on the left-hand side here, and I'm going to push it to the right-hand side. There we go. And then I'm going to, I added a little bit of padding to the right of this. There's no need for me to do that. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go to our grid and just add like a gap x8. And that looks reasonable. And then I'm going to change this video to an image, remove this stuff, and then I think I took a screenshot earlier today. Rotating mockup? Yeah, rotating mockup. So I'm just going to change the source to that rotating mockup image, which is at /asset/sketch rotating mockup.png. If I save that, I should now have that image. And that happens every now and then. Good, yeah, I totally do have that image. Only downside being, because we copied it over, we have like the border classes and the shadow classes and stuff like that. And we don't actually need those for these. So I'm going to remove the border. I'm going to remove the rounded. I'm also going to remove the shadow. So that should now blend into the background. Yep, totally does. And aside from that, I think we could probably space this out a little bit more. So why don't we go to the gap X and just turn that into a 10. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, now I'm just going to do the same thing I did earlier, keeping everybody in sync, and copy and paste the text here. That looks good to me. Bring ideas and feedback together and move effortlessly to development. Let's do that, and then I just have to do these images as well. So let me just open this, copy this. Where's this? Here. So I'm going to copy and paste that over, and then I'm going to copy and paste. Oh boy, I hate doing that. Here. Let me do this. And then I'm going to add a source to this, and the source is going to be this last image, hopefully. Let's see if that works. Where are we? All right, where are we at now? Yeah, good. That looks really good to me. The only difference being they don't have that browse extensions thing down here on this second grid, so I'm just going to get rid of this entire div. All that div that we put all our hard work and effort into. Awesome. That looks really similar. Cool. All right, now I'm going to see what kind of mobile optimization we need for this. I probably should have done this before, now that I think of it, because by doing this before, when I copied and pasted it over, I wouldn't have had to do it twice, but whatever. You live and learn. Looks like first and foremost, we should probably add a little bit of padding. So actually, first and foremost, we have a large breakpoint here where the grid that is 3 columns turns into 1 column. So, unfortunately, I have to do that twice, but since grid calls 3, we should actually go grid calls 1, and then on large displays, we'll go grid calls 3. And call span 1 is actually fine for that. So now ours should immediately, yeah, perfect. In addition to that, we should MX auto this. And then a large, we can just go MX none. No, MX 0. I think MX 0. It'll pump that, hopefully pump that to the middle, or maybe not. Let me think real quick. Yeah, these should come substantially closer to the middle. Why would that not happen? Well, to debug, why don't we turn the background red and see where we're at. So here, that's the width. If we go smaller, that is the width. So the width is spanning the full kind of width of the container. I could do a couple of things. I guess I could turn the width to half, but it would make more sense for me to wrap this in another div that's MX auto. Let me see if that works. We're trying to get this work fast, create beautifully to pop into the middle. I suppose, in all honesty, I didn't even need to do this. I could have just copied and pasted this over here. So I'm just going to remove this div class thing, remove that, and that should work too. Yep, totally does. Last thing I'm going to do here is, I don't have any gap spacing on this. I should have added a little bit of spacing. Why don't I just go gap 8? That'll bump this down a bit, make it a little closer to what theirs is. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go PX, LG PX2, otherwise I'll go PX5. All right, makes everything a little bit smaller, makes the spacing and stuff like that more similar to theirs. Let me scroll down a little bit more, see what else is going on here. So it looks like additionally they have that padding applied to the bottom grid, because we have 2 grids. We have that grid on the top, that's kind of 1/3, 2/3, and then we have this bottom grid. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go LG PX2 and then PX5. So that should bring these in a bit. It's good. And let's see what kind of breakpoints these go for. Looks like these break really... Oh, sorry, that's mine. I was wondering why that wasn't breaking earlier. Looks like there's just breaks at the medium breakpoint, and then they're all just at the side. So we can do that really easily. This is grid calls 3 for medium upwards. Otherwise, it's grid calls 1. And I believe that's all we would need to do. Yeah, it is all we would need to do. Oh, the width is actually down to 3/4. Yeah, so we could do that too. If we go to each of these divs, how many divs do we actually have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, good. That's the only one we wanted. We could go width 3/4, and then mid we could go width full. So that's actually too small now. Is it? Let me standardize these and see where we're at. Let's go smaller, actually. Yeah, no. They probably just have a max width element, a max width designator. So I'm going to go max width XL. That might work better. Whoa, that certainly does not work better. Okay, let me erase some of this stuff. I feel like my multiple cursor selectors got me in kind of a pickle there. Let's go back, start this bad boy from scratch. Where were we? Yeah, it looks like we add a little bit of extra spacing there onto this work fast create beautifully here. So let me see why. What is that? Width 3/4 probably? The width 3/4? If I take that out, let's see what happens. Yes, that totally was the width 3/4. So why don't I apply this? Let me see, actually. If I don't apply it, it looks like this. Which is not what we want. We want it to be a little bit smaller. So why don't I go 4/5 and then LG width full. With full, with 4/5, 4/5, 4/5. And then why don't I only do that on medium, and then it should still just be width full everywhere else. Hell, we could probably do that all the way up to small, in all honesty. Small, 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 and then it breaks, and then we're good. Only downside being we haven't done that down here, so we have kind of that weird messed up look, but that's perfectly fine. Okay, awesome. I like this. It's not perfect. It's not exactly what they have, but I think it's a good compromise. So we need to do something quite similar here to the second div, unfortunately. So I'm just going to copy the various classes we've applied here, because we're going to need to apply that again. And let's scroll all the way, all the way, all the way down to where we have that second div here. The way that this works is, again, it turns into grid calls 1. Sorry, it turns into grid calls 3 on large displays. So if I make it smaller, you'll see that it folds over, which is exactly what we wanted. Additionally, there's a bit of padding. So we can do our PX, LG PX2, otherwise PX5. And that's just going to go over the entire element. Puts things kind of in the middle a little bit. And then on this call 1 here, which is here, we can just paste in the previous classes that we had. And that should now push this in the middle a little bit. Yeah, that's good. And then gap X10, we're just going to move to gap 10. Okay, awesome. So now it should go full width. Good. Otherwise, it's kind of in the middle, just like theirs. Awesome. Let's do the last little piece of mobile optimization we need to do. Add that padding on large, and then small, we'll do PX5. And then we'll do grid calls 1 and only go to grid calls 3 from, I believe, medium and up. Let's see, medium, medium. Yes. Broken. Awesome. Cool. That looks great to me. Yeah, very responsive. There's a lot of stuff that's moving around as we move the page, and that's essentially what we want. Cool. Last thing I got to do is just create this element. Like I said before, I'm not going to add all these wonderful, beautiful SVGs. You guys can add that on your own time if you'd like. Actually, it looks like they have a skip navigation button. I'm not sure exactly where that is or why that pops up, but I'm not going to rebuild that either. I'm only going to kind of make this sexy little gradient happen. And I think that's just our caret 500 to our caret 600, maybe in caret 700. So in order to do that, I'm going to go down here, go div class. Let's do BG gradient from 2 rather, 2B. Let's do from BG, I think that's caret 500 probably. From caret 500 to caret, let's do 2 caret 700. Let's do H64 and let's do this. A little too dark. We'll do 2 caret 600. Now we're going to MX auto this, turn the max width to 6XL. Now it's going to pump that in the middle. Yeah, that's perfect. Now we're going to rounded 2XL and then shadow XL. It's getting pretty similar. They might even be more rounded than us. Can we go 3XL? Is that a thing? Yes, yes we can. And then it looks like they have, in all honesty, it doesn't look like this is center aligned. I think they screwed something up here. Let me see if I refresh the page if it fixes it. No, I think they actually just have a little bit of extra spacing that's pushing this to the right. Oh well. You have been investigated. Get started with sketch today. We're just going to go H2. I'm doing my best to keep these classes relatively semantic here. We're going to go text white, text 3XL. This is font display 2. And then we're going to go tracking type. And then we're just going to copy and paste this, put this here. And let's go MX Auto. That should bump that into the middle. Oh, that did not bump that in the middle at all. Sorry, text center, not MX Auto. Always mix those two up. And then we're going to go font bold. We're also going to turn this into a flex call container, go justify center and item center, and that's just going to pump everything down the middle. We're going to make this a little bit bigger, 4XL, and then we're going to do our H4 underneath it, which is turn your ideas into incredible products with a 30-day trial. So go over here. I believe this is like text white opacity 50 or something. Let's do opacity 70. Yeah, so that would be text XL too. Maybe a little bit bigger actually. Let's do text 2XL. Let's add a quick MT4. Oh, never mind, that's way too low. T2. And let's see if we can actually move this to 5XL. Yeah, there's no real good middle ground here between ours and theirs. The only thing I can tell you for sure is that theirs is a little bit tighter. But aside from that, that's basically it. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this button. So let me close this H4, go down here. Actually, let's do a ahref just for continuity. I'm going to go BG white, rounded SM, shadow SM. Let's do PX4, PY. Actually, let's do PX5, PY2. We'll do, goes up again. So we'll do hover. Let's do transform first, then hover, negative translate, Y, PX, I believe. And then we'll also hover, change the background to gray. I think it just goes gray, or does it go orange? You know what, I think just opacity 80 actually. That's probably enough. And try for free, and then we'll just go A. Let's see ours. Well, ours looks ugly. Let's go text caret 600 and font semi-bold. And then we'll go PY3 and then space this out by 6. So how are we looking, guys? I'd say it's decently similar. A couple of differences, of course, with the font and stuff, but honestly, aside from that, I'm almost happy, I was going to say, with what we have. Last thing I had to do is add a transition, put the duration at 200. Yeah, that looks a lot better. It's not perfect by any means, but again, we're like 80-90% of the way there. Okay, awesome. Last thing I'm going to do is these colors, actually, I think they could be even lighter. Yeah, there you go. That's perfect. And then I'm just going to add a little bit more padding to this. So let's go PY. Actually, let's just do P in general. Let's do like 8. That should bump this down a bit. Make this a bit bigger. No? Oh, it's because I got a max H property set here. So let's actually do PY 16. Double that space. Good. And then I have a feeling we're going to need PX 8 later. So I'm just going to put that in for now. That looks good to me, guys. Awesome. And you'll also notice that the background is getting lighter as we go down, just like the Sketch's landing page does. And then when we make it all the way down here underneath, there's going to be a little cutoff where the BG goes back to that nice color. So let's work on the footer, and then let's finish all this stuff up. So let me sort that out. Good. We're going to create a footer now. The way that this footer is set up is it's a full width footer, so all the way from one side to the end. And then inside of that, there's nested max width 6XL. And it's like kind of two components. There's a component over here, then that has a border on the bottom, and then there's another component with like a grid layout that looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At the very bottom, there's a little copyright. We're not going to do that just because I don't want to get in any legal trouble. That's essentially it. So I'm going to go div class width full BG gray 50 first. I believe 50 is probably enough. And let's just go H64 for now, just so I can see what that might look like. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. We're also going to go MT 16. Bump this down a bit. Let's do MT 20 actually. Should give us some extra room. Good. And then let's get working on our newsletter. We're going to have another div inside. It's max width 6XL. Border B, border gray 200. And then it's going to be flex, item center, justify center. No, justify center? Not justify center. We're just going to stretch it all the way across. Div has no ending tag. Why is that? Oh, did I get rid of another tag? No, I just didn't write it over here. There you go. Cool. We should also MX auto this. That'll push that in the middle. Good. We got that border bottom. We got nothing there. So why don't we start creating our divs? First div is going to be width 1/2. And it's going to have a H4 with that. And then underneath, there's just going to be a paragraph tag with that. Cool. Let's go to this and add like PY4 or something. Let's add PY8. Who am I kidding? I love my padding. Then let's just copy this div over, do the next section. The next section is kind of interesting. Oh, let me just font bold this first. Font semi-bold, rather. The next section is kind of interesting, actually. We have what looks like an input just smacked up against a button. So, in order to do that, all we have to do is just create a parent div, just with what looks like a border. Do they even have a border? Yeah, let's just do that. We'll make that parent div span the full width of that half container, and then we'll have an input. That class is going to be like py, let's do 4 for now, px2. Actually, let's do py3, px4. Background white, and then let's do rounded SM. You know what? Actually, no. We should put this on this. That would be better. A lot more apt. And then let's just put a placeholder here that says your email address. And then we'll have just an ahref, I suppose, with the same padding. And it'll say subscribe. And that should be good. Decently good, I mean, for now. Okay, we're back to ours. Let me just give this thing a quick refresh. Scroll down. Where are we? Okay, we got the button that says subscribe right over here. It's not happening because we didn't flex these. And we also didn't justify between these. So flex, justify between. Let's turn the background of this ahref to caret 600. Pop that up. And for whatever reason, the border, I'm always kind of iffy on borders here. I think if I were to add a border, yeah, it looks okay. It's not the best border I've ever seen, not the worst border I've ever seen. For some reason, the border doesn't go all the way over this. Oh, you know what? If we could just add a border caret 600, and that should just make this pop out a little bit more. Cover that. Yeah, that looks fine to me. Looks like theirs is actually pushed a little bit more, so why don't we explicitly add a width to this, say 4/5. And why don't we go to here and do width 1/5. No, never mind, let's not do that. For whatever reason, this looks like it goes a little bit wider than half, actually, now that I'm looking at it. So instead of half, why don't we do, it's not thirds. Could it be fifths? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we could try that. Let's do 2/5 and let's do 3/5. You know, I almost wonder if it would be better to just grid this. Might solve a couple of issues. Because now that I'm looking at their website, if we go rather below a certain breakpoint, it looks like the width of this changes. Hold on, let me go back down. So looks like it has a certain like max width at that breakpoint here. And as we go up, it gets kind of wider and wider and wider. Oh boy, that's really annoying. And then it gets just a little bit wider than half. Yeah, so why don't I do that? Let me just, oops, there we go. Yeah. Let me go back down to subscribe to our newsletter, monthly digest, latest sketch news and resources. First of all, this looks to be a little bit darker than the background. Let's do 600. And then let's also do like tracking tight. Pull that in a little bit. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. One thing that I really like Tailwind for is the number of grid utilities, rather like width utilities that they have. Like we have 1/12, 2/12, 3/12, all the way up to, I believe, like 10/12. So I could do sevenths, I think. Yeah, 7/12. That might work. Let's do 7/12, and here let's do 5/12. Let's see if that's more accurate. Yeah, that actually looks substantially more accurate. It's a little bit off, and it looks like this is a little not rounded enough. So if we round this, push that to medium, then that should be good. And then we have that issue again where the borders don't kind of wrap entirely. But if you go overflow hidden, problem solved for that, and that actually gets rid of some of the one of the other issues we had here. So that's really nice. Last thing is it looks like this subscribe button lights up a little bit when we hover over it. So we go to the subscribe button. Why don't we go hover BG caret 500, then hover shadow medium. Granted, because we're overflow hiding, we're probably not going to get that shadow. Yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to. So why don't I actually take this overflow hidden off? See how that changes. And then because we have this border around it, we also have to change the border value. Sorry, not BG, I meant border. We have to change the border color as well. Anytime that you have a border in addition to just the background element, you have to make sure to change that on hover. Now let's add a little bit of a duration on this. Maybe even more. Theirs looks like it takes another little bit to come into effect. Yeah, that looks pretty realistic. And then I wonder if we could even shadow large that button, because for whatever reason that button looks like the shadows a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. That's more like it. Okay, great. And then why don't we go border, sorry, rounded R medium, and see if we can get something similar. Hell, maybe even small is fine. Yeah, no, let's do medium. Okay, perfect. We have that hover button, hover effect. Now the only thing that we have to change here is we have to make this input field the full width of this little container. So why don't we go to this input field and then make this width full. It's going to push it all the way through. And I don't really like how it works, how they have theirs set up, but that's fine. Granted, we could always just go focus outline none, and then instead do focus like ring 2 or something like that, and just use Tailwind's built-in ring utilities. The only issue with that is then we would have to round this as well. There you go. And then instead of rounded MD, we would probably do rounded LMD, that way we wouldn't get that. Yeah, but then it kind of bumps out a bit. So, I don't know. I'm not really that much of a fan. in all honesty. So why don't we just get rid of those? Yeah, there you go. That looks fine. Okay, let's see what else we got to do here. We have that line. That's good. Now all we really have to do left is create a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 column grid layout. So let's scroll down, excuse me, to where we have that BG Gray 50. That's right over here. And now let's create a grid with grid call 6. It's going to be really interesting dealing with the mobile responsiveness of this. And for now, that's good. Oh, let's just do gap. They probably have a gap, probably quite a big gap in all honesty. Let's do gap x16 and let's just see how that goes. And for now, why don't I just create a bunch of ULs? I think I'll start with that. Yeah. Let's just create 6 ULs. And then in every single one, why don't I just do example element? And let's see how that looks. Okay, whoops, so obviously a little bit spread out. So we should do MX auto, max width 6XL. Let's do our paddings as well. Should push that in. Good. And I'm realizing now we also, I don't think we did the padding on this element too. So while I'm at it, why don't I just make it really easy on myself? Just copy that over to here, actually. And now everything here should be pushed in the same amount. Good. And then let me see if I did that up here. Did I add padding? No, I didn't add padding because I actually need to wrap this in another div with these features. And that now should push that in a little bit. Cool. To verify this, I'm just going to squeeze in. Yep, great. We have that little bit of padding. That's nice. And then the padding goes to 5 on smaller displays, which is nice. And you know, I should probably also change some of that text size because that text size is a little too big. So why don't we do LG, and otherwise we'll do text 3XL, and then LG, and then otherwise we'll just do text XL, and that should be good. All right, let's give this a quick try. Nice. Yeah, that looks fine to me. Not perfect. I mean, I think it jumps down a little too fast. So why don't we do MD text 4XL, just so we have like a kind of an intermediary there. So that's 3, that's 4. Sorry, that's 5, that's 4, and that's 3. There you go. Looks good to me. Okay, so yeah, now that we're dealing with this bottom section, what we would have to do is add a little bit of MT to the to this element. Looks like that's probably going to be a 7 or 8, so I'm just going to go 7. Yeah, I think 7 is right. And then all of these, let's just wrap this in an LI, and then just make all of these like the parent element, basically. So the parent, not the parent, rather the kind of the header element. So in order to do that, we're just going to go font semi-bold. Yeah, that looks good. And I think some tracking might be at play here. No, it's not. Okay, good. Awesome. Now I'm just going to copy over all of these titles. So product, apps, resources, company, follow us, and more. So products, oops, apps, resources, company, follow us, and more. See how that looks? Good, that looks decently similar. I would say the padding might actually, or rather the gap on the grid might be a little too much, so let's maybe pump that down to 14, see if that works. Maybe even 12, actually. Yeah, there you go. I'd say that's a little better. Awesome. Let's remove the height from this element now because we no longer need it. Now that'll just be however tall it is. Fantastic. And now let's just take a look at how these things are built. It looks like they're just links. They probably start at like a text gray 500, and when you mouse over it goes to like text gray 800 or so. Looks like there are a few cool like little SVGs that we have to take care of. This SVG is going to be cool because I don't think there's like a rotate. What would this be, like -45? I'm not 100% sure, so we might have to do some funky stuff with that. This looks like it's going to be fun. I'm guessing these are all just SVGs that they have, so if they are, I'll just copy those SVGs. Then we have some more like heroicons placed here or there. So just to make sure that I get everything right from the get-go, let's do a list item. Let's do this. So we're going to make another list item, and inside of that list item, we're going to have an ahref. We're just going to go to that little number sign for now. And the class is just going to be text gray 500, and then hover, it'll be text gray 800. We'll have a transition, and then we'll have a duration 200 on that. And that should be good. Let's just do overview for now. Overview, and then A. Let me make that a little cleaner, and let's see what that looks like. That's pretty good. I would say the first element probably has a little bit of extra margin top, so I'm going to go margin top like 1 here. Bump that down just a little bit extra. Maybe even more. Let's go margin top 2. For whatever reason, that's not really adding much space here. Looks like my cat's having a fit. I'm going to, I'll tell you what I'm going to do actually. I'm just going to go to this UL and then add a flex call, and then space Y, and we'll just do like 4. And that way all of these will be spaced out at about 4. So maybe 3 actually. There you go. I think that's actually going to work great. So this is actually literally still too light. So that text gray 500 actually has to go to text gray 400. Yeah, there you go. That's much better. And awesome. Now that we have that done, we can just start banging off the rest of these. I'm going to just copy and paste this a couple times. I believe it's 4 on each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, so it's 4 for all of them. So I'm just going to copy and paste this like 4 times in every single one here. So we go li, good. Paste that 4 times. Let's format this a little better. Awesome. And now I'm just going to start changing these names. Boy, this is going to be fun. So what do we have? Overview for designers, for teams, and pricing. For designers, for teams. Feel free to skip through this section if you'd like. Pricing. Then we have Mac download, Mac releases, Mac beta. Mac download. Mac releases. Mac beta, and then what? Get mirror. Good, and then we have get help, extensions, events, and meetups, and blog. Get help. Extensions, events and meetups, and then blog, about us, careers, press, labs, about us, careers, press, and labs, and then Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Dribble. It's always been interesting to me how, wait a second, Twitter, oops, Facebook, my bad. It's always been interesting to me how Twitter is now really taking the forefront in kind of like the web development community. There's an extra B in there, right? Yeah. Manage license. Manage license. Developer platforms. Terms and conditions. And I think last one's privacy, right? Oh no, just status. Okay. Whew, that was fun. Great. We have that little effect thing going on. Fantastic. Okay, last thing we have to do is let's remove this placeholder div at the bottom because we no longer need that. So this is going to go all the way down to the bottom, and let's just space this out just a bit more. Ours actually looks pretty good, but I'm just going to space ours out a little more because the padding needs to be a little bigger. So this is a god-awfully long footer, eh? Let's do MT. Why don't we actually just do PY 10 on this? That way we'll get a little bit of the bottom too. Yeah, there you go. That looks much better. Like I mentioned earlier, we're not going to do the sketch BB thing. For whatever reason, this looks like it's came back. So I'm going to go back to that input element. And I'm going to make that rounded MD. Yeah, there you go. Awesome. And then the last thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to add these little arrows and stuff like that. So they're actually quite easy to do. You could just go to whatever the section is that you want. So in this case, Mac download. Let me just Command F this, Mac download. I just need to make this class a flex container, and I'm just going to do like SpaceX2. And I need the Herocon where the arrow is down, so I'm going to go arrow down. Oh, they didn't even have that. We're just going to go arrow down, and then right next to this, I'm just going to go down. Class is equal to, let's do text gray 400, and if I had to guess, it'd probably say W3H3. Am I right? Whoa, that looks a little high. No, it needs to be a little bit bigger. So we're going to go W4H4, and then we just need to add item center to this. I always forget. Nice. That looks relatively similar. Our arrow is a little bit different. I probably should use the fat arrow here rather than the super narrow one, but that's okay. And SpaceX2 might be a little too big. Let's do SpaceX1. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so that's that. Now we need to do the same thing, just with that diagonal arrow. I don't think these guys have diagonal arrows. No, they don't. So let's do arrow narrow right, and we're doing that for get mirror. So I'm going to go down to get mirror, paste in that SVG. I'm going to go to my LI and of course do flex item center SpaceX1. The class for this is going to be W4H4, and then text gray 400. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, so it's a little bit to the right. I'm going to see if we could do transform, rotate, negative rotate 45. Let's see if we can do that. Can we? Oh, yeah, we can. Okay, perfect. Nice. So now we have something very similar going on there. You notice that we don't actually have the mouse over on that SVG. I wonder if we can get that by putting this, wrapping this text in a span, putting the SVG inside of the A tag, and then putting all of the relevant elements on that A tag. I wonder if we could do that. I don't know if we can. No, we can't make that SVG hover, unfortunately. So in that case, I'm just going to take that out and make it like it was before. Okay, good. Now, if we scroll down, where are we here? Careers. So now we're going to do careers. Careers looks like it's just a circle with the number 9 in it, in all honesty. So I don't think that's an SVG or anything, in which case we could just make it ourselves. Let's go class, let's do the same thing, SpaceX1, let's go item center. We have the A over here. Now I'm just going to make a div. I'm going to go W6H6, BG gray, 400, rounded full. And then I'm just going to go hover like BG gray 800. Let's do that. Let's just put the number 9 in. And while we're at it, we'll add flex to that. Justify center and item center just to pump that 9 in the middle. Let's see where we are. Ooh, that's actually quite similar. Wow, look at that. Yeah, that's actually super similar. Colors too. I'll add a cursor pointer to that, but it looks like I can't combine these so that they both hover, which is kind of annoying, but you know, it is what it is. Still looks pretty good. I guess the text would probably be SM there too. Just make sure we got it right. Yeah, that looks good to me. Nice. I really like that. And then we just have the Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Dribble, social media, SVGs. Yeah, I knew they were going to be SVGs. So for that, we could just do the same thing. I'm just going to paste that SVG in for Twitter, this SVG in for Facebook, this one for Instagram. It's nice that they excuse me. It's nice that they make this so easy. And then this one for Dribble. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add the same classes. I think this is SpaceX1 item center. I'm just going to add these same classes to the 4 LIs that are like the parents of this. So if I do this, and I go back now, I have them. Why are they at the... Oh, yeah, they should be at the beginning. Whoops. So that sucks. Okay, well, it just means I gotta cut these and put these after. So that SVG is gonna go first. This one's gonna be second. This one's going to be third. Let's put that there, and then dribble is going to be 4th. Just going to format that, and then you see how there's this main footer nav item icon. I'm just going to take that out completely, go text gray 800, 400, and then hover text gray 800. And I think they're doing text gray, not background, are they? No, they're probably doing background actually. And we'll go fill current. That way it'll fill with whatever our colors are. Let's do that, and we'll also remove this text gray 400 because there were 2. And why don't we add a cursor pointer while we're here? Something weird's happened with the dribble one. Looks like the dribble one is on another line. Why is that? Oh, I pasted outside of the LI. Nice going. So if I format that, this is going to pop over. Good. And then we just have the same arrow for developer platform is get mirror. So I'm just going to go get mirror. Literally just copy this over. I'm going to go developer platform and just replace this entire LI. And then I'm just going to type developer platform. And then manage license just has that little chevron down. And that chevron down is going to be the same as, if you remember on ours, that little chevron down up here. Oh, whoa. Never mind. That doesn't look good. Weirdly enough, I think this is just a little too long. Yeah, it totally is a little too long. Why would that be? SpaceX1 too big? Could be. Let me see if I just add tracking tight to this and remove SpaceX1 if that's going to be enough space. Yes. Wait. Yes, it is going to be enough space, but I want it to space out a little bit. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, that's indistinguishable. Awesome. And what was I just talking about? Oh, yeah, manage license. I want to put that little chevron down so you guys know what that chevron down looks like. Why don't I just go all the way up to the very top again, and you'll see I have that chevron down. Resources right here. So I'm going to copy that SVG. I'm going to go all the way back down to where it says manage license. And then I'm going to put that here, and then I'm just going to copy the other styles for putting these within the LI. So let's copy and paste that right here. Awesome. Last thing is just to change that color. So why don't I go to SVG, text gray 400. Nice. Oh yeah, cursor pointer. All right, last thing we have to do here is mobile optimize this layout. So if I scroll all the way down here to theirs and I start pushing this in a little bit, you'll see they have pretty ample padding around this element. And if we scroll down to ours, we have something pretty similar going on, although I think our padding is substantially lower. Yeah, it is substantially lower. Until you reach that large breakpoint, and then it becomes similar. So all that's really telling me is we probably don't even need the LGPX2. So I'm going to find LGPX2, and I'm just going to remove that. And we're just going to just get the PX5, really. So why don't I just do this? Oops, sorry. Let me put that back. Yeah, let me just do PX5. That should be a lot better. For some reason, that LGPX2 is still applying here. So I'm going to go LGPX2, delete that. There you go. Now that's a lot further in, which is nice. Yeah, it looks a lot smoother that way. On top of that, it looks like the bottom here needs to wrap a little more because theirs goes from 6-column layout to a 3-column layout the second that it gets a little bit smaller. And boys, that's super annoying. We have to scroll all the way up every single time that happens, so screw that. If I go to this grid, which I believe is right here, that means that on large screens, I want it to be grid calls 6. No, XL screens, I want it to be grid calls 6. Large screens, we'll do grid calls 3. On medium screens, why don't we do grid calls 2? Actually, why don't we do small grid calls 2? And then otherwise, we'll do grid calls 1. That should solve 95% of our problems. See, theirs goes 3. Yeah, I figured. Theirs goes 2, and so on and so forth. So ours goes there, ours goes to 3, then ours goes to 2, and then ours now goes to 1. And I suppose the last thing we need to do is just add a gap here, because the gap is on X, but it's not on Y. So I wonder what would happen if we just make that gap 12. How would that look? A little bit big. So why don't we do gap X at 12 and gap Y 6. Pump that up. Yeah, there you go. That looks a lot better. Okay, cool. So that footer is done. And now that I'm looking at it, we also need to fix this top section here, because theirs folds over after what looks like the medium breakpoint, and ours does not fold over after the medium breakpoint. So why don't we fold ours over after the medium breakpoint? Where are we here? Okay, so this is width 7 to 12. Why don't we just put that on medium? We'll just put that on full otherwise. And that should work now, right? So we just go. You know what? Actually, we don't even have to do that. We could just go. Actually, no, we should do that. But the major issue here is we just don't need to flex this. So we go medium flex, otherwise it's just going to be block. Yeah, there we go. And then I don't think they do this, but I'm going to add 3 units of margin top, just to space that a little bit more on smaller screens. Awesome. This is about as small as it gets. And then as we go up, stretches out even more. Alrighty, I am quite confident to say that we did a pretty good job here. We rebuilt essentially, let me just scroll all the way up to the top of the screen so you guys can see where we are. We rebuilt what I would say is probably like 80 to 90% of all of the elements on this landing page. We did it all in HTML, CSS, using Tailwind. And I will say, I mean, coming from a design perspective, this is incredibly similar. It's super similar. Like basically all of this is the same, just minus some JavaScript and minus like a couple of percentage points on like the font sizes and the margins and little apps like this that, you know, little JavaScript plugins like this that rotate elements and stuff like that. Oh, I guess the last thing actually is we didn't copy over this text. Let me do that. What is this? Open up the design process, and this is work fast, create beautifully. Let me see. I'm just going to go down here and just change that because I want you guys to have this later. I'm going to put this up on a GitHub, and you guys can use this yourself for like a project starter or something like that. But yeah, anyway, aside, like I said, from a couple of little changes like that SVG, that rotating thing, this is basically the sketch landing page. This is one of the reasons why I love Tailwind so much. And I wasn't even using it super efficiently. We didn't even use any component class or anything like that. But you can mock up a landing page in really just a few hours. It's a lot easier if somebody has given you a design. That's why I always like doing rebuilds like this when I don't have a designer to give me something, just because developing and designing at the same time is always more difficult. That's not to say that you can't do it, though. I've done it for a lot of my own personal projects, a lot of my own startups. I hope this video helped, guys. If you guys have any questions or anything like that about how to get started with Tailwind, why maybe some things aren't working out for you, or like why I'm doing certain things, feel free to give me leave a comment below. I'm going to respond to basically every single one. It means a lot to me to be able to help people like you guys out, because YouTube is primarily how I started. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video.